Good afternoon on what is a warm, bright and sunny day. It is Thursday the 7th of August and I'm in the reading up with a nice hot cup of tea and a box to continue unboxing. And I think I'm going to be having a bit of a espionage theme with this and the next parcel that I'm unboxing. And what I've got here is a copy of The Secrets of Station X, How Bletchley Park Helped Win the War by Michael Smith. And so what happened was that basically my partner and her friends decided to go to Bletchley Park because as a day trip. She brought me back this book and to actually show it's actually purchased at Bletchley Park, which is a nice little touch. That as long as a jar of Bletchley Park marmalade, and I have to say it's very dense. So, the definitive history of Bletchley Park by one of the world's leading experts on Britain's spies. The astonishing story of how the British codebreakers of Bletchley Park cracked the Nazi Enigma ciphers, cutting an estimated 2 years off the Second World War, never ceases to amaze. And no one is better placed to tell that story than Michael Smith, whose #1 bestseller, Station X, was one of the earliest accounts. Using secret files and interviews with the codebreakers themselves, Smith now provides the definitive history of everything that happened at Bletchley Park during the war, from breaking the German, Italian and Japanese codes to creating the world's first electronic computer. For the young men and women who did the bulk of the day-to-day code breaking, this is truly the time of their lives. The Secrets of Station X tells their story in full, providing an enthralling account of one of the most remarkable British success stories in history. Okay, so and it says essentially the Bite Back Espionage Classics series began in 2010 with the purpose of bringing back classic out-of-the-print spy stories that should never be forgotten, from the Great War to the Cold War, from the French Resistance to the Cambridge Five, from special operations to Bletchley Park. The fascinating spy series includes some of the best military espionage and adventure stories ever told. There we go. So yes, Bletchley Park, and obviously it's been the subject of various films of late, like the Enigma Code and so on, often focusing upon Alan Turing's involvement in the project. And let's not take away from that. But obviously, because if you're making a film and you're telling a story on screen, you really want to focus upon particularly one person. If you're making a documentary, then you can talk about many people. So as I say, purchased for me at Bletchley Park. And you've got the acknowledgements. And we get straight into chapter 1, and so on. And really, let's see what we've got in here. Quite dense text, but likely informative and interesting, because really the story of Bletchley Park didn't come out until sort of the 70s, and then really the 90s. It was kind of hinted at in the 70s, but then the 90s it was kind of, it came out and was written about, and the men and women who worked there were actually prepared to tell the story of what they had done, because up until then they'd all signed the secret, the Official Secrets Act, and couldn't say a thing, or believed they couldn't say a thing. But really now, there's this, you've got an Enigma machine that there, the story could come out, and then of course we do actually have a famous image of Alan Turing. And so the story could come out and they could reveal their involvement in it, often much to the amazement of their families, because, there's an obvious sexism involved here, because you look at the people involved in World War II and you knew, or you've been told, that men and women were involved at all levels of the conflict. Now, women weren't placed in direct conflict, of course, when there are exceptions, of course, but British women weren't particularly. And So what your grandma did in the war, you mean she might have sort of kept it secret and not told anyone, and sort of like this amazing story came out. So it gave a chance for families and the like to reflect, upon what their great aunts and their grandmothers, their mothers, and so on, had really done. So yeah, this is really nicely illustrated with lots of photos, and this is kind of, including here, essentially, images from sort of like the Christmas review held at Bletchley Park. I mean, because obviously it's a very closed-off world, and became its own community, as it were. And there we essentially got one of the first computers that were known as basically the bomb. So yeah, essentially, we move on to the latter half of the book, the birth of the modern computer. Let's get to there we go. So I just find it. Yeah, so that's the map of North Africa. Wasn't what I was looking for. And looking back, all of the technology developed during the war to crack the code was laid the basis for modern computing. And obviously you think, well, hold on a minute, wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the events at Bletchley Park in a great many ways. Not just obviously the contribution to the war effort, to foreshortening, the war, but then the technological advancements made are the basis of the world that we live in today. So anyway, so you do have some endnotes here at the back of the book, so lots of references to check there. And of course, index brings the book to a close. So yes, that's The Secrets of Station X. I think that'll be an interesting read, along with sort of like the pile of Ben McIntyre books I've got to read beside the bed. But in the meantime, I do hope you enjoyed this unboxing in the Nook. If you did, then please do click on the like button down below. And if you've got any comments or feedback, I do appreciate you taking the time to post those. And lastly, if you want to be alerted to more unboxings in the Nook, where you'll see me out here typically with a box containing a role-playing game, supplement, scenario, and so on, which I will then unbox and talk about to the best extent of my knowledge for roughly 10 minutes or so, all of course accompanied by a nice hot cup of tea. Then please do click on the subscribe button down below. Thanks again for watching. I'll be back again tomorrow with another unboxing in the Nook. Bye for now.